Welcome to Business on 570 News and the first show of the new year.
Happy New Year.
Greg Durocher, Ian McLean, and our special guest, Rob Leone, Cambridge MPP. First off, Happy New Year to you, and how was your holidays, gentlemen?
Mine was fantastic. Ian, I heard, I was following Twitter and Facebook and seeing lots of posts about your challenges over the holiday.
What challenges would that be?
I'm not sure, but you might
we had a
want
fabulous Christmas here in Waterloo across the 401. It was awesome. I'm not sure how you guys
It
were
was
south
kind
of
of
the
nice
401.
because normally, like Ian and I are communicating quite often. All through the holiday break, nothing from Ian. It was kind of.
Well, you
like
ignore
that.
me
It was-
most of the time, anyways, when I try and get in touch with you.
It was
so.
a break.
It wasn't.
Have we
you're
chatted?
damn right it was a
Have
break.
we chatted since Ms. Halloran decided not to run?
No, we have not.
Election?
No, lots of news since our last show. So
What do you make of the situation going forward?
Well, I think it's going to liven up. I'm actually surprised that she's not running. That was the one surprise. I think there's not a surprise to me that Ken Seeling's running again. I think he wants to, for whatever you think of LRT, I think he wants to cement that and make sure that that's done, and who will campaign on that.
But are you hearing anything about who may or may not throw their hat in the ring to replace Brenda?
Yeah, I think someone's going to announce tomorrow, which I won't preempt their announcement.
That's not like you.
You
I
think?
know.
Wait, you think someone's going? to
No, I
announce-
know someone's going to announce.
Ian
tomorrow.
McLean.
Not me. I can tell you, absolutely, unequivocally, no, will not serve if asked, and that whole thing. Absolutely love the Chamber of Commerce. But someone's announcing tomorrow. I think you'll find there'll be at least one, if not a couple of the existing council members will be looking at this.
Yeah, you know what? I thought maybe Sean Strickland might take a shot at it, but with Ken Seeling saying that he's going to run for regional chair, and I know Sean. There's always rumors out there that Sean would like that post, but I thought he might take the mayor's
Sean made it
post.
official.
Yeah,
in a
he did make
statement
it official.
that he's running for re-election for regional council.
Regional council.
But yeah, I agree with you. I think as soon as Mr. Seeling, if and when he decides not to run for re-election, I think Strickland would don't know. I can't prove it. That I haven't talked to him about it, but it would be a logical fit.
But this election, I mean, I think it'll be really interesting. I suspect there'll maybe some more new faces in Kitchener as well. And I don't know about you guys who can know more about Cambridge, but I'm pretty sure Doug's running, isn't he?
Yeah, Doug's going to run again for re-election, but I think there might be some new faces coming, maybe existing Cambridge councillors that are going to take a shot at regional council too.
Well, I think that's going to be the big one. I mean, regional council, city councils, as you know, you and I were both local councillors, and that does affect a lot of day-to-day things for people. But I think with a lot of the issues, whether it's garbage collection, recycling, public health, there's going to be some, as someone said to me yesterday, it's going to be a tough 4 years to be a municipal councillor, whether it's a region or on city councils, because it's going to be some tough decisions to make. So I think you're going to see some new faces in Waterloo. Well, definitely in Waterloo in the mayor's chair. You might be some changes on Kitchener Council as well, with some people.
Well, Carl Zare hasn't.
He hasn't said. He said in February, so that may that leaves the question of whether he's running.
And I was a little surprised that rookie councillor Glenn Graham decided to throw his hat in the ring to take on the mayor's position.
Well, I think that there's.
I was a little surprised by that, just given the fact that because he's a rookie councillor.
Well, I've been hearing that for quite some time, that those that were sort of, whether it was on one part of the council that don't necessarily agree, because that's been a pretty fractured council.
Yeah.
They've wanted to put someone forward to represent what they see as their perspective, and so Dan's the first one out of the realm. But when a sitting mayor doesn't run, so it will open up. People will start thinking about it, because whatever you say, incumbency has its privileges especially in municipal politics. So with Brenda not running, I think some people who may not have thought about it before may be taking a look at it. And if Carl, and he's been there a long time, if he runs again, I'm sure he would be very difficult to beat. If he chooses not to, I think that will open up a whole lot of people on council and not on council.
Well, one name. When you talk about the heir apparent to Mr. Zare, the name that always comes up.
Barry
Verbanovic, for various reasons and obvious reasons.
He's been there for a long time, but he's also done a lot in terms of his.
Yes.
And you guys in Queens Park, Rob, would have worked with him with FCM and trying to work on the whole infrastructure and communities and all those sorts of things. So he's been a real leader in a lot of ways, not only locally but on the provincial and national scene.
Did you happen to catch? I was watching in between periods of the hockey game yesterday on on Rogers TV. The Mayor Zare and Mayor Craig have got these little shows on TV. the year, what was it? I forget what it was called, the
Year in Review
or
or
City Review, or I forget what it was called. Nice job. Zare walked around this downtown Kitchener and talked about some of the new developments going on, and spoke with a guy from Perimeter.
Michael Deschênes?
Beatty from Perimeter Development.
Oh, Craig Beatty.
Craig Beatty.
From,
and then Mayor Craig took viewers on a tour of some of the projects going on in Cambridge, the old post office building, the train station. Some of it was really. But
I think the theme of this though is there's going to be, obviously there's municipal elections, and I was just saying to Rob off air, and he kind of joked and said it'll be the provincial election October 2015. I think we can all safely. I would be willing to bet, my pink slip of my car, which of course I don't own, but whatever. But I would bet that there'll be a provincial election in the spring, and obviously is a municipal.
Well, let's explain then to our listeners, and we should point out that we are being joined by Rob Leone, Cambridge MPP. Welcome to the show, Rob. Great to see you.
Nice to see you too.
We're going to talk about Rob has tabled a bill.
Rob has tabled a bill. That's I think Rob and I had some conversation about it. That a business friendly bill, and maybe not so much business friendly, but of interest to business. And it's called Promoting Educational Success Tax Credit Act. And Rob, you've tabled this now. Why don't you give us kind of the 30,000-foot view of what this bill really would do?
Well, thanks for having me on. Happy New Year to all of you and to all the listeners as well. The bill came as a result of some work I had been doing, and we hear lots of stories about what's happening in our economy, and lots of bad news in terms of Heinz and Leamington and Kellogg's and in London, and not to mention a lot of the local businesses that have gone under here or have moved their production south of the border here in this region. We often hear about the trouble that people get into when they lose their job, and the reality is we spend about $2 billion in the province of Ontario retraining people after they lose their job, and one of the things that
on an annual basis.
Yeah, on an annual basis. And so one of the things that we thought about is, wouldn't it be nice if we started doing this more proactively? And at the end of the day, obviously it would help the worker in terms of getting some more training done earlier on throughout the course of being employed. So if the bad news comes one day, the worker is well prepared. But it also helps the business owner, because at the end of the day, obviously higher literacy and numeracy rates actually improve productivity for workers. And if the calculation is, are we going to keep the plant in Ontario or are we going to move it to another jurisdiction, one of the calculations that people make are, how productive is the workforce? And certainly we want to make sure that we're doing the best we can to encourage businesses to stay here. And one way we can do that is by obviously training people and making them more productive.
This is not just manufacturing is one example, and that's some of the high profile where we've got people that may have worked there for 10 or 20 or 30 years who find themselves without a job and may not have another manufacturing job to get to. So that's when we look at them and say, and try and help them to retrain. But what we know, and especially in this region, is 2 universities, a community college. We've got all kinds of other think tanks and whatnot. It's a knowledge economy now, and we have to start thinking. And I think that's what the basis of this bill is that training and continual education is something we can't just talk about. We actually have to do to make sure that workers are prepared. What's the stats? I think it's when our parents were growing up, you might have 1 or 2 jobs in a career, but you could work at the same place your entire working life. Now it's something like 6 or 8 jobs. For my kids that are here today, they'll work 6, 8, 10 jobs during their working life.
Very easily do that. And, lots of people that I know, I'm 34. My age bracket, they've already had several jobs and several careers, not just because of, their work going, no longer being there, but they actually want to change and they want some change. And that's good because, they get different experiences and they can be more portable and good workers at the end of the day. But, the stats are those. At the end of the day, in Ontario right now, we have 48% of people that are working that don't have the basic literacy and numeracy skills to do their job. And that's a huge number. This is a TD Bank study that showed that. And we have to do more to do this. Productivity in our economy is one of the things that's lagging. We're no longer sheltered by a low dollar and that make wages and producing goods in Ontario lower. We have a high dollar, and included with that is we have high energy costs. We have labor policies that obviously cost business money. So we have to start doing something to turn the tide. And there's a number of things that we can do, one of which is to improve the educational attainment of our workforce. You've touched on, I think, a very important element, which is lifelong learning and creating that culture of lifelong learning. I see this bill very much as a first step. At the end of the day, this bill is about helping workers get their high school diploma. So we're not talking about we always seem to focus in our economy about the top 20% of people, the smartest people. Smart people will find a way to get around tough times. It's those people at the bottom that are struggling in our economy today when their factories close and so on and so forth. So what can we do to make sure that they're in a position to improve themselves, to make their businesses produce more at a lower cost? If we can come up with different policies, those jobs can still be here. We can still make things in Ontario, and I think that's one of the things that we should be promoting.
Now, I know what's really interesting to me to some degree is the fact that U.S. has had a tougher time through this recession than Canada has, by all accounts and from financially speaking. However, our productivity has continued to that gap between the U.S. productivity and the Canadian productivity has widened in spite of the fact that their economy has hurt more. Are you saying, now I know a lot of it has to do with the fact that businesses in the U.S. tend to take their resources and reinvest them in themselves, but are they also using those resources to reinvest in the people too through education? Well,
this is what the problem is. If a company wants to become more productive, it's obviously when you have a high dollar, you can import machines at a obviously much more effectively than you can when the dollar is lower. That should encourage productivity enhancements. You buy new machines, you put them on the plant floor, and hopefully they can create things at a faster rate. If the person operating that machine doesn't have the literacy and numeracy skills to maximize the output of that machine.
Most of those are computer-based, and you have to have technical skills now.
You need the technical skills. You need to, basically be able to function, read a manual, make sure that all the buttons are going, making sure that if you can make the adjustments necessary. If you're not able to do that, if the workers aren't able to do that, the business who invested lots of money in that new equipment is not going to see the benefit of that. So one of the things that what I'm suggesting is that we have to start saying, okay, well, this is a problem. I think we have to create an environment where businesses actually can automate more, and advanced manufacturing is something that we talk about quite a bit. But in order for us to maximize the benefit of that, we have to ensure that the workforce is prepared to do the work and operate the machine.
We're in conversation with Cambridge MPP Rob Leone on Business to Business. We're going to come back with more as Business to Business continues on 570 News. And welcome back to Business on 570 News, powered by Save On Energy. Glenn Pelletier with Ian McLean and Greg Durocher, presidents of their respective chambers of commerce, the Greater KW Chamber and the Cambridge Chamber. And we're in conversation with Rob Leone, a Cambridge MPP and Tory education critic, recently appointed as such. Rob, what's your primary role as education critic?
That's a good question. A lot of people don't know, I guess, the roles of what we do in opposition. People understand that you're a minister or you're not. But in the opposition, we do have a shadow cabinet. We shadow ministers. My, obviously, minister is the Minister of Education. And I follow everything that's going on in education. I meet with stakeholders. I talk about policies that can improve the educational system. Something I care very deeply about because I have young kids. I have 3 kids under the age of 6, so it's something that obviously as they go through the school system, I'm keenly interested in as well. And it's an important feature. I think that education policy in general is partly responsible for the kind of society that we're in. And obviously having a well-educated workforce when students go past their primary and secondary school and go into university or college or whatever life takes them after high school is obviously a very important question that we have, and making sure that we have the right mix of people for the jobs that we have here in Ontario.
So this, and let's come back to your bill. I mean, I think it's important and you've got an example that you can share about a company in Cambridge, which may be on the larger side of business. But how does this actually work? So how would a small or medium-sized business take advantage of what you're proposing? How does it get paid for? Is it a worker thing? Is it a government-paid program? Is the employer or some combination? And what are the trade-offs? Or is this just a complete gap in the system that needs to be filled and we have to find a way to pay for it?
So this is a tax credit. At the end of the day, we're reimbursing people in companies in particular for investing in their workers. There's a company, MW Canada, in Cambridge. It's actually one of the places where the idea originated for me. I took a tour of the place. They've actually set up shop in the factory. There's a space where they've put up a few computers, and part of the condition of employment for those workers is to say that we're going to continue to and progress educationally. Sometimes it's workers improving their English language skills, particularly if they're not they're new to the country. Sometimes it's about completing your high school diploma. Sometimes it's about going to the next step. At the end of the day, Bob Berger, who's the president of the company, thought investing in workers was a good thing, not just for the workers and the morale of the workplace, but also for his business. And it's a textile manufacturer, and textiles obviously are struggling in our economy, business, particularly here in this region. Yet we have some very good textile companies still in Cambridge, and part of the reason for that is they're investing in their people. They're investing in machinery that'll help them make the products right here, and make good products that people want. And that's the kind of story that we don't talk enough about in our economy. And one of the reasons we can do that is we're investing in people. How does a small business do this? I think is the second, because obviously not everyone has the space. Not everyone can have their workers taking time from the day-to-day work to finish or complete a program or a project. We can partner with our colleges, with our adult learning centers. You can do these courses, your courses to get your GED or your high school diploma online through correspondence. There's a variety of ways of doing it. We're not saying that there's a one-size-fits-all, but what we're saying is that we need to start making these investments in people. Youth unemployment is another issue that this touches upon as well. We have a lot of people who are struggling, people in the age range from 16 to 30 that aren't finding work. If there's some way we can start doing and encouraging them to better educate themselves for jobs that are out there, we're better off. And I have to say that this is about trying to get people to complete their high school diploma. That's what this bill is about. But this is part of a larger project to say that we need to value education, that education is an important function for workers. And at the end of the day, it not only helps the individual, but also helps business. And I think those investments are worthy investments for businesses to make, and for government to partner with businesses at the end of the day.
I think we've always looked at that productivity gap and the problems with productivity as more specifically related to the infrastructure of the company and making sure you've got the latest in technology and the right equipment and all that kind of stuff. But I guess, simple minds like myself,
really simple.
we sit back and say, yeah, but if you don't have the people to run the machines, maybe that's a really good reason why you're not investing in those machines. Because, if I was the owner of a small business and I had to, I'd like to buy this machine because it's going to take my company to the next level. It's going to reduce that productivity, going to make me more productive. But if I don't have an individual that can run that machine, I'm in trouble.
That's right. That's one of the issues with productivity. And I think there are lots of people who think about these things, but not a lot of people who operationalize the problem in a practical and pragmatic way. And I think that's what we have to start doing. Is these problems are known. Productivity is a problem that we need to fix.
Okay, so productivity, sometimes people glaze over. So let's get back to the education. So if I'm the worker and as an example, 75% of my business's members and 75 of yours will have 20 employees or less. So the vast majority are going to be in that, what I would say is really small to small to medium size in that context.
SE, not SME.
Yeah. the small employers. Is it always the employer that has to pay, or is it can be a combination? An individual take advantage of the tax credit? I mean, how does that partnership work together? For some companies, would it be okay to say, look, we don't have the dollars to invest, but we will provide some time or some space, or we'll partner with an agency, but ultimately the worker may have to lay out the cash and then get a tax credit back, or is this employer-based program only?
So, first of all, I think this is about employers. The bill is about employers particularly because there's a variety of reasons why people don't finish their high school diploma to begin with. That could be family reasons, it could be personal, it could be mental health issues, undiagnosed learning disabilities. There's a whole variety of issues of why people do that. And there's always also a whole lot of reasons why someone won't be incented to do that themselves. But one way that people can say, well, actually, I probably should finish my high school diploma is because my boss wants me to. That's a motivator for a lot of people, right? So the idea behind having an employer make that initial contribution is to say, look, we really value education. We think it's good for you. We think that ultimately it's going to lead to improving your own life. The statistics are there. For an income perspective, people who finish their high school diploma earn more. Fewer people who have their high school diploma. If you have your high school diploma, you're less likely to be in poverty. And then there's the corollary benefits to your children. If they see mom and dad succeed, they actually get the diploma, get something of value, and education is valued in the home, their kids are more likely to succeed. So, we're talking about trying to improve the condition of families in general. So there's a lot of benefits that we can extend this to that are particular. But how is it paid for? So it's an employer tax credit. The cost of the courses themselves aren't prohibitive. We're talking about $40 to $100 depending on where you do it, and then there's the tests that obviously allow you to be certified to have the credential.
Yep.
We're not talking about lots of money to do these, depending on how many courses that you've done, of course. But it's the point that we're trying to make, that we're trying to say, let's look at this in a pragmatic way. And at the end of the day, it's a 25% tax credit, which means the government, for every 3 courses an individual does, the government's going to pay for 1. And we think that kind of incentive is the right way to go.
Our guest is Rob Leone, Cambridge MPP, who in late November introduced legislation designed to help educate workers, offering businesses a 25% tax credit toward the cost of an employee's completion of their high school education or equivalent. We're going to come back and talk about where that bill stands now and get to more as Business to Business, powered by Save on Energy, continues on 570 News. And welcome back to Business on 570 News. I'm Glenn Pelletier, and starting a new year with my good friends and host of the show, Ian McLean, president of the Greater Kitchener-Waterloo Chamber of Commerce, and Greg Durocher, president of the Cambridge Chamber of Commerce. Our producer is Catherine Drake, and we're joined in studio by Cambridge MPP Rob Leone, a Tory education critic who had tabled a bill late November. Just to recap or revisit it, Rob, what was the crux, the essential element of your bill, and where does it stand now?
Right. So it's a 25% tax credit for employers who invest in their workers to complete their high school diploma. It's passed first reading in the legislature right now, and right now I'm actually on a province-wide tour to promote the bill and to promote the idea that we need to invest in educational success, and that's a value I think that a lot of people share. And right now we're obviously talking with other parties. It's a private member's bill, so those don't really make the light of day. I likely won't have another ballot slot this year. If there's no election, then I probably will have a ballot slot this year where we actually debate this in the legislature for second reading. So it's obviously election dependent, but something I feel very strongly about, something that I want.
This should be well received by everyone, shouldn't it? Like, this is pretty basic kind of motherhood. And
you said the same thing about the Fair and Open Tendering Act, and look what happened
exactly,
there.
I said that.
Well, I mean, I've had initial discussions with members of both other parties. I don't have a lot of people who are disagreeing with the concept of the bill, but that doesn't necessarily mean it'll see the light of day. There's a lot of, as the legislature works, it's a pretty fascinating thing that even a person with a PhD can't really figure out what bills go through and what doesn't. But it's the idea that I'm promoting right now. I think it's obviously chambers of commerce around the province are very interested in hearing more about it, and that's why I'm out promoting the idea. And I'm very thankful that you decided to have me on the show today.
So, the idea of this coming forward. So it is in second reading, or it's at least it's past first reading. Would this become and I guess this really just leads over to get right to it is there going to be an election this spring? Because a lot of things are getting, the fair and open tendering, which we'll go on our rant later about, because that's something that needs to be solved whether there's an election or not. But issues like this, and you talked about this, saying this is a first step, so it's not perfect. It doesn't address all of the challenges that especially young people have, or and people that don't have their high school equivalency or diploma. But so this is a first step. Will this become part of the Conservative platform if there is an election? And I guess the real question is, do you see that another budget getting passed? Because ultimately, that's what whether we're in an election or not is going to depend on whether the Liberals can get another budget passed.
There's a lot of stuff you got had in that little wind up there, Ian. And I do think for listeners, you might have seen the coffee come out of Ian's nose when I said that. But first of all, I mean, a platform. If an election happens, there will be a platform, and I think what will be focused in that platform will be issues that matter to Ontarians. And obviously education is going to be part of that platform, but also I think what we've been saying for a very long time is that the focus has to be on jobs and the economy. And kickstarting the economy once again, we've been saying for a very long time that Ontario has been lagging the country. Our unemployment rate has been for pretty much more than 6 years. Our unemployment rate's been higher than the national average. Completely unacceptable. So jobs and the economy will certainly focus on what the platform will say. Whether there's going to be a budget this spring, obviously there will be one. Whether it'll pass or not, I think is up to the NDP. We have been saying for a long time that an election's needed. We need fundamental change in the province of Ontario. It's our position. We've been teetering on the brink of crisis for too long. And, we are one credit downgrade of making some very hard decisions when it comes to our social programs in this province. And I think that we can't get to that, and we certainly need an election. So it'll be the NDP who will decide whether we go or not.
Okay, we're not going to replay the show in April, Rob, so nobody will remember likely, but is it going to happen?
I hope it does, not just for us, but also for the province. I think we need one. I think Kathleen Wynne needs a mandate if she wants to continue to be premier. She has been untested on the electoral circuit province-wide. I think voters have a need to have say and pass judgment. If she's going to put some controversial stuff on the table, particularly her pledge for taxes for Toronto Transit that are going to be controversial, particularly in these parts where we're not in Toronto, nor we're going to benefit from that. And I think Greg and we talked about the pension stuff that the Liberals want to put forward. If you're going to start talking about implementing some of those very serious and fundamental changes in terms of policy, you need to be tested in an election. You can't let this continue for indefinitely.
2,000 Liberals in a leadership convention, there's not a mandate.
Well, it's not a mandate to obviously increase payroll taxes when it comes in a fragile economy. It's not a mandate to increase taxes exponentially by $2 billion a year for Toronto Transit. And I think that's an issue that we have to contend with. You need to go to the people if that's what you're going to plan to put in your budget. So I would think that most people who have some sense would say that we need an election to decide these things. And if the NDP aren't going to play ball in terms of voting against the budget with these things in it, that the Liberals should call an election anyway. And I think that that's our position. Our position's been that for quite some time. Mm-hmm. We no longer express confidence in this government. We haven't for a long, long time. We still need to settle the score with gas plants and the issue with some of the scandals that have been plaguing this government. There's lots to talk about in an election. I think is needed to clear the air. We need the people to decide on these matters. Certainly, we have our position and we're entrenched. We think the Liberals have their position and are entrenching in the fact that they're continuing what they've been doing. We don't really know where the NDP stand at this point in time, but the people need to decide. And I think that in a democracy, that's what we've set up. And I think it's time to get going.
Rob, the government has spent almost $8.5 billion on education over the last 10 years. Are you satisfied with where and how that money has been spent? Certainly they've earmarked a lot of cash for education.
Well, this is the problem. I think when you say the other part of that, they spent $8.5 billion more in education. We have 250,000 fewer students in the system. So we're actually paying exponentially more when we have 250,000 students, fewer students in our system. And people, I think, legitimately have to ask, what did we get for that money? Are our scores, our test scores, going up? You know, if you look internationally in science and math, our test scores have been going down, and even in reading, there's some difficulty with the scores. And they were better in 2003 when we left office than they are after spending all this money in education. So where'd the money go? You know, you talk to university professors, and I used to be a university professor before I got involved in politics. You know, studies are showing that university professors increasingly are saying that their students aren't prepared to succeed in university. 91% of professors at the University of Western Ontario are saying that their students aren't prepared to succeed in university. That's a huge number, and I think that speaks to some of the trouble that we see in our education system. It's a story, obviously, that is untold that needs to be told, and part of my job is to tell that story. But, am I satisfied with the fact that we're spending all this money in education and we're getting actually weaker results? Our students aren't succeeding as they should? Absolutely, I'm concerned about that. I'm not concerned about that simply because I'm the education critic for the Tories. I'm concerned about that because I'm a parent, and I want my students to be in a position where they're going to succeed. And I want an economy to accept these students when they're workers at the end of the day. And I think we have to start thinking about these in tandem, not just as separate solitudes.
Oh, it's been great. It's been great to have you, Rob. We need to have you back a little bit more often, I think, and talk about some of these educational things. And certainly we probably will when the election rolls around this spring.
Yeah, and I mean, we keep us updated on where this is at. I mean, we got to have probably more. In my view, I mean, we know Michael's bill and Harris's bill, your colleague, and the bill you're putting forward. A lot of these make sense, and I think this is part of the reform of our electoral or governmental institutions, where good ideas like this need to be taken a hold of by both government and opposition, and saying we need to just do the right thing for both business and individuals. So I hope that these types of things can be brought forward, and our rant on fair and open tendering, which we may just roll this into our rant, but we do have your leader coming on January 16th to a joint chamber event where he's going to give his views on where the province is going.
And he'll be a guest on Business Today.
And he will. He's going to do a whole hour with us on. And so we should actually ask people what are the questions you wanted to ask. Send in email questions. But we'll have him on. Then at the end of February, Andrea Horvath will be we're finalizing the date with her. And we're obviously the questions we're going to be asked. One of them is, where do you stand on fair and open tendering? How are you going to solve that problem? But it gives them an opportunity to.
And will there be are you going to try to defeat the government?
Of course, we're going to ask them with it. Of course, we're going to ask that. But we want to have, and we said we were going to have all three leaders. We think Horvath, is coming at the February 22nd, and the Premier's office has indicated she's coming as well. And we'll do an hour on our program.
I think in all fairness, they know what they're going to be asked. They know that fair and open tendering is a bee in our bonnet.
Well, we've already told them. We said, look, we're not trying to catch you off guard. No. We're going to ask about business and education and how taxpayers are affected, and fair and open tendering is a huge one. And we're seeing a lot in the paper recently about arbitration and how it affects fire service and police service. And when we talked at the opening of the show about the municipal election, the reason it's going to be a tough 4 years is you've got things like when staffing is 70 to 80% of your budget, and police budgets and are driving increases in those things. It's going to become tougher and tougher for municipal governments to make ends meet.
Absolutely.
And so we got to have these discussions, and we want the provincial leaders to indicate how they're going to support communities and municipal.
So on January the 16th, Tim Hudak, Rob's leader from the Progressive Conservative Party, the leader of the official opposition, will be in Holiday Inn Cambridge for lunch. So you can contact either chamber, Greater KW Chamber or Cambridge Chamber, and get your tickets for that. It'll be a great one. Because Ian and I are going to make sure there's tons of questions coming from the floor.
And what is the occasion again? Is this part of a series?
It's a leaders luncheon series.
A provincial leaders speakers series, and we're going to have each of the leaders in the next in January, February, and early March.
Yep.
We'll have all three, the Premier and the two opposition leaders. And we think this is, Rob was being as delicate as he can, but I'm absolutely convinced there's going to be an election this spring. I just don't think the NDP can support this government anymore. So we want to have the leaders on record of saying, what does it mean for Waterloo Region?
All right, we'll leave it right there. Mr. Leone, thank you so much for your time today.
Thanks for having me, Glenn.
Rob Leone has been our guest, Cambridge MPP. We're coming back with more as Business to Business, powered by Save On Energy, continues. Time now for another installment with Jeff Quint from Waterloo North Hydro, here to talk about the importance of Save On Energy.
Well, thanks for coming back in, Jeff. Last time we were talking, it was a small business week. We were talking about ways you work with small and medium-sized business, and we ran out of time. But I did want to ask you about Peak Saver Plus, because that's something that is really targeted for the folks that we hope are listening to our show. So tell us a little bit about that program.
So Peak Saver Plus is an expansion of an existing program known as Peak Saver, and basically what it is a program to help customers manage their electricity load through programmable thermostats, and the plus part of the program is providing them with what we call an energy display. And this energy display gives customers near real-time information on their energy usage, so what they're doing right now, so they can carry it around their facility, and they can see exactly what's happening, turning things on and off, and they can learn what's a high energy user and a low energy user, which then allows them to target different opportunities within their business. It's free to customers, both residential and small business customers. And like I said, it's made up of a programmable thermostat that is professionally installed by local installers, and this in-home display or in-business display that gives them near real-time energy information.
That's great. And so as we talk about this, I mean, building the business case. So for and I'm a small business owner, we work with a lot of small business. They're going to want to know, and we talked a little bit about what the size of your programs are, but what is the business case? Like, what are some of the things you talk about? You got tangibles, intangibles, return on investment, operation costs. What are the things that you lay out for people in terms of building that business case?
Well, the key areas that everybody always focuses on is what kind of savings I'm going to see. And they look at the dollars and cents at the end of the day. But you have to look at the savings from switching from an old piece of technology to a new piece of technology. But look at the maintenance savings, the operational savings, not having to change out lights so often. Those kind of things all function into the business case. And a lot of times people don't bring them all into play at one point of time. And those are the measurable ones. Those are the ones you see. They're the dollars and cents on the bottom line. But it's the intangibles. You could improve your lighting. You may have happier employees. You may have better light. And all those things add up to more productivity in your facility and things like that. So
it's just, to some extent, it's not just dollars and cents. It's there's those softer things. So if you got more comfortable employees and more productive employees, that's one of the benefits as well.
Certainly. One of the key things we see as stumbling blocks when people are looking at the building a business case and a success story is that they hit a home run with some project early on where they have a great project and has a great return on investment and a really low payback period, and then they stumble across the next project and management stumbles upon it and says, I don't know where to go with this. It doesn't match up to the other project. And what we do is say, look at them all as a big project, and then use the programs and the savings to finance other projects. Use the incentive to finance that next project. Use the savings to finance that next project, and build it in something that's long-term, something that's sustainable within the organization.
And one of the things we haven't talked about here is just the general satisfaction one gets by knowing they've done their part for the environment. I mean, I'm constantly turning lights off. Not because I'm concerned about saving money. It's not going to save you that much in my home to turn off a light.
That's just constantly. The right thing to do.
But it's just there's a principle involved, and in deliberately being green, for the sake of it, there's a certain amount of satisfaction in that.
Well, there certainly is, and you've got customers and consumers looking for this. They want to work with businesses that do what they do. Businesses and people like to do business with people that they like and do things that they like. So it's the right thing to do, but it's a way to really improve that bottom line, and a great way to make an impact in the community.
Now, we talk about this. Is there a place to go? Does the website have like an online where you can figure out how to do that, or is it best done when you have one of your staff come in and actually walk through it with someone?
Well, the best place to find information on it is at saveonenergy.ca, but the best way to get involved with us is contact your local distribution company, and they'll be happy to come out and walk through your facility and walk through the programs.
All right. Thank you so much, Jeff. Our guest has been Jeff Quint from Waterloo North Hydro. You're listening to Business, powered by Save On Energy on 570 News. Just over a minute to go, gentlemen, and we want to wish Greg a happy anniversary.
Yeah, it's. I'll leave it just to say that Greg is very fortunate to have a lovely wife named Lisa, who I'm just saying deserves the Patience of Job Award every year on her anniversary, because she puts up with his act all year. But congratulations on your
happy anniversary,
53rd? No, 13th. I'm sorry, 53rd anniversary.
Oh yeah,
13th.
She'd be really happy to hear that. I'm going to tell her that you said it was.
She doesn't look
60th.
a day over 29. Lisa, you're not a day over 29. But we're excited to have Peter Braid coming on Thursday to the Holiday Inn, and he's going to speak about his new role as Parliamentary Secretary on Communities and Infrastructure, and he'll talk a little bit about the free trade agreement that's been signed, as well as...
to Greg quickly.
On January 29th, we have Salute to Women in Business. It's a great event. We usually have 250 women out, all celebrating their contribution to business.
We salute our producer, Catherine Drake. Thanks for the great job you did today. Our guest, thank you very much to Rob Leone, KMH MPP, for coming in. You've been listening to Business, powered by Save On Energy on 570 News.